Hello, and welcome to Session 4 of the Self-Guided Kinston 101 sessions. Today we'll be talking about the Planning, Code Enforcement, and Inspections Department. The Planning Department, as its name suggests, helps guide long-term changes in the city, like our land use, zoning, and boundary changes, as well as our changing floodplain, by creating plans and regulating new development in Kinston. Planning also pursues grants to help the city take on special projects that range from public art programs to housing repair to environmental assessment. Kinston 101 itself began as a project in the Planning Department. The Code Enforcement and Inspections Department works closely with planning to issue permits and perform inspections to ensure development in the city is safe. They also enforce city ordinances around abandoned vehicles, overgrown grass and weeds, minimum housing code, and other nuisances. These departments help the city make plans for a healthy, safe, prosperous future and then stick to them. Please feel free to take this session at your own pace. Let's get started. The Planning Department. The Planning Department's mission is to facilitate development, engage citizens in the planning process, and implement programs representative of community needs. We strive toward a built environment that promotes healthy living, economic opportunity, and instills pride in our community. Planning can be divided into long-range plans that are implemented through short-range means. We'll start with our long-range planning documents. Perhaps the most comprehensive is Plan Kinston, our comprehensive land use plan. This document is a guide, not an ordinance or a law. It collects all kinds of data about the city to show what's going on in the city and is a tool for grant applications to tell the story of why we need financial assistance and what we'll do with it. The data that's collected as part of the comprehensive land use plan can help tell all kinds of stories. For example, the map you see in front of you is Kinston's population density. But when overlaid with something like the location of full-service grocers compared to zero-vehicle households, we can use this data and maps to show things like how far people live from their average grocery store, and use that to advocate for increasing grocery stores or food access in the city. But what is land use? Land use is essentially what a person is using their land for. A single-family house, a hardware store, a park, or an apartment building are all examples of land uses. When thinking about how we want the city to look in the future and what kind of uses we want to prioritize, the land use plan puts these into categories. For example, the purple in the center of the map represents the mixed use of commercial and residential that happens around downtown, and the neighborhoods surrounding it in orange are a generally residential land use. Alongside land use, we have zoning districts, which determine the uses permitted in different areas of the city. In the top row, you can see our zoning districts. For example, zoning districts that start with RA are residential, O and I is office and industrial, B1 and B2 are our downtown districts, etc. On the left-hand column, you can see different types of uses. For example, a cemetery, a fire station, or government offices. The boxes tell you what uses are permitted in each district and what other actions a person wishing to have that type of use should take, if any. So, for example, if I wanted to have a cemetery use in an RA20 district, I would go to RA20 and go down to cemetery. This is permitted with supplemental regulations, which you can see on the right-hand side, which is a permitted use but with some caveats. There are also freely permitted uses, uses that require obtaining a conditional use permit, and uses that require both a conditional use permit and additional supplemental regulations. Boxes that are blank are not permitted by the city. By having this variety of permitted uses, conditional use permits, permitted and not permitted, the City Council is able to guide what kind of development and what kind of uses there are in each zoning district, which can help make neighborhoods feel more like neighborhoods, and reserve particular spaces in the city for office, industrial, and business uses. So where can you find all these regulations? You can find them in our Unified Development Ordinance. The UDO sets rules for what you can build, where you can build it, and how. It includes things like landscaping requirements, sign regulations, subdivision regulations, flood damage prevention, and historic district regulations. It includes everything from setbacks of your home in a residential district to regulating parking in a new development or landscaping. The regulations that are part of our UDO are authorized and regulated by the state through general statutes. And these statutes are in turn supported by the overall mission of the City of Kinston, which is to support the welfare and safety of all its residents. An important component of our UDO is regulating our floodplain. The City of Kinston is heavily impacted by the Neuse River during heavy water events or during hurricanes. And so people who would like to build in the floodplain must go through a permitting process to ensure that their building will be safe or elevated outside the floodplain. These regulations incentivize people to locate outside the floodplain in a place that's safer. This is also a collaboration with some other agencies. For example, our Neuse River Hazard Mitigation Plan is a collaboration among several municipalities that are also affected by the Neuse River and planning strategies during emergencies and before emergencies to help protect our citizens. The Planning Department also has information about the city's limits and the ETJ, which is our extraterritorial jurisdiction, the portion of the planning jurisdiction that lies outside our corporate limits. This is essentially a buffer around the city, which slowly transitions outside of an urban environment into the more rural environment of the county. Folks in the ETJ are subject to the zoning regulations of the city, must apply for city permits and have city inspections, and they pay county taxes. However, they are not subject to city code enforcement, do not have city police and fire protection, and don't pay city taxes. Depending on where they live and if they're in the City of Kinston service provider area, they may or may not be a City of Kinston utility customer. The Planning Department is a great department where citizens can get involved. Our Planning Board helps advise the City Council in amending the comprehensive plan, in recommending development ordinances, and in determining whether proposed developments conform to the comprehensive plan and approving major site plans. We also have the Board of Adjustment, which in the case of the city is the same group of citizens as the Planning Board. They hear requests for variances, answer zoning map questions, and serve as the Housing Appeals Board. We also have a Historic District Commission, which recommends the creation and amendment of a local historic district, considering applications to alter structures within a historic district, and recommend applications for the creation of a landmark to the City Council. In Kinston, our Historic District Commission is primarily over our Mitchelltown Historic Residential District. However, the Planning Department also has many temporary committees that help support grant applications or special projects within the city. For example, our Mural Selection Committee helped administer our grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to create 7 unique outdoor public murals. And our Brownfields Committee is helping guide our grant process for environmental assessments through our Brownfields grant. Other ways to be involved with the Planning Department and the city in general are through Kinston 101. Kinston 101 as an in-person event is a 9-week program that helps inform citizens about city operations while being able to meet department heads and go see aspects of the city in person, including visiting our wastewater treatment facility, visiting City Hall, our parks throughout the area, and much more. You can also participate with the city by answering surveys, as is shown by our update to our Kinston pedestrian plan, which asked residents how they walk in the city and how they might want to walk more, what they would need. Above, you can see an example of another public art program of a mural that's being created in Rochelle Middle School. There are plenty of opportunities to get involved with the city, and those are advertised as they come about. The last important thing to understand about the planning department is that it's a relatively small department. Looking at this graphic of a city resident's tax dollar, only about 0.01 cents goes towards the planning and community development aspects. However, with just that small amount of funding, the city has brought in, or the planning department has brought in $4.5 million in the last year through grants. So the impact of the planning department can be much higher because we're able to pursue state, federal, and philanthropic funding for other things. If you're interested in contacting the planning department, our planning director is Adam Short, who's available at 252-939-3269, or our community development planner, myself, Sarah Arney, at 252-939-3271. You can follow us on Twitter or go to our webpage as part of the city website, kinstonnc.gov, Planning and Zoning. To help illustrate exactly the breadth of what the planning department does, we'll review a few projects and the important things to consider as a planning department staff member. The first are our home repair grants. Older housing and recurring disasters make preserving housing difficult. The city pursues various grants to help owners keep their homes at a minimum standard. Grants that have been awarded to the city in the past include our Essential Single-Family Rehabilitation Loan Pool Program, one specifically for disaster recovery, and community development block grants like NC Neighborhood. These grants require applying for federal and state grants as a local government. So this funding does not come from the city, but is pursued by the city, which means that we have to follow state and federal rules. It also requires us to work with consultants to administer the grant and contractors to do the actual work, which is outside the normal bounds of city services. Considering the high cost of home repair and the aging housing stock in the city of Kinston, these grants make it possible for the city to offer a service like home repair, which it would not be able to normally. These home repair grants can also be flood mitigation in practice, especially when they're for disaster recovery and to support survivors of hurricanes. Next, we'll talk about the shirt factory site. This shirt factory site has been demolished for years. It has the potential to be a transformative development project, but requires private involvement to work, which was made much harder due to the presence of hazardous waste on site. However, with the city pursuing a Brownfield grant, they were able to do some assessment of that area, which will make it easier in the future for a private entity to get involved, which is an example of a public-private partnership, which is increasingly popular in trying to make economic development happen in municipalities. As I mentioned previously, the city used a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to create our Downtown Kinston mural program, which was led by a citizen committee that chose wall locations and artists for public murals downtown. This shows how important citizen engagement is in planning, in choosing the artist and the locations where this vibrant public art would change our downtown for the next 5 to 10 years. It's also important to help balance the different needs of the community. The National Endowment for the Arts prevented us from putting murals on walls that were considered historic. And so it was important to balance the benefits that we get from having historic districts in our downtown versus the benefit that we get from having this beautiful public art. The North Lenoir Office Building. North Lenoir Water Corporation approached the city to build an office. but they needed the parcel to be rezoned. So as we learned earlier, when they looked to build their office, it was not permitted in the zoning district they were in. This request was approved by the planning board and the city council, and the water nonprofit was able to open in 2017, supporting our community. So it's important for the planning department to work with new businesses and to support the review process done by the planning board, which is a citizen-led board, and the city council. And this is the kind of work that happens on a day-to-day basis, but which citizens may not see. The Queen Street redesign project was a $3.2 million streetscape project alongside the North Carolina Department of Transportation, which reduced Queen Street from a 4-lane to its original 2-lane road and made crucial pedestrian improvements downtown. The planning department's goals could be summed up in 3 major categories: to have functional and occupied structures in the city, which means repairing and preserving historic and older homes, removing blight, encouraging responsible ownership, and increasing occupied homes and businesses. It also supports Kinston's economy and culture by supporting public art and history, supporting new businesses and residential development, and improving access to these things for everyone. And finally, flood resilience, slowly helping people move out of harm's way and enforcing rules that reduce or elevate new development in the floodplain. Now let's talk about our permits, inspections, and code enforcement department, which is tied very closely to our planning department. What is code enforcement, and where does our code come from? Code enforcement is how governments ensure that all commercial, residential, public, and other buildings are healthy and safe. Inspectors in Kinston enforce code from the state, which it borrows from the International Code Council for building, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, and fire prevention, though the fire prevention code is handled by our fire and rescue department, as we'll learn later. The city also enforces ordinances regarding minimum housing code, grass and weed abatement, and nuisance car ordinances. The permits and inspections process is an important part of development in Kinston. It begins by submitting a permit application for the kind of work that you would like to do. It goes through a review process to ensure that all the information is present and it's permitted in the city. You receive a permit to do the work, have inspections during the process, and then may have a final inspection to ensure that the work that you have done is safe and done by a qualified person. But this process changes significantly depending on the size and the nature of your project. You can call 252-939-4021 to learn about the process for you. What does it take to become a certified inspector? Inspectors can be certified at level 1, 2, or 3 in any of the 5 codes, which is building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and fire. New inspectors can get a probationary certificate in a code type, attend a course, and then take a state exam to become officially certified. But to study for the next level, the inspector must either obtain a degree or spend a certain amount of time working successfully at their current level to qualify. All of our inspectors are continuously completing education requirements to stay up to date and to build their certifications. Grass and weed abatement and junk car enforcement is an important component and something that you may wish to contact the department about. If you see overgrown grass or weeds or an abandoned car, you can call 252-939-4022 and make a complaint. If the property is determined to be in violation of the city's ordinance, the property owner will be given 10 days to abate the violation. After that, the property will be added to the list for the city's contractor. An assessment for the abatement and fines will be charged to the owner as part of their property tax bill. Condemnation and demolition. If you see a home that looks unsafe, call 252-939-4022 to make a complaint. If the property is in violation of the city code, the property owner will be ordered to evacuate and either bring the house up to minimum standards or demolish the property. Owners have multiple opportunities to appeal this decision or to make essential repairs to the home, so the process can take anywhere from a few months to multiple years. And just because a home looks in disrepair does not necessarily mean it can be condemned. Finally, the city has a limited demolition budget, so once the money has been spent for that year, the city can't demolish any more buildings until the next fiscal year. If you'd like to contact anyone in the Permits, Inspections, and Code Enforcement Department, you can see their contact information here. You can also go online to see a list of available permits and their contact information on our website at kinstonnc.gov at the Permits, Inspections, and Code Enforcement Department. Thanks so much for watching. Our next session of our Kinston 101 self-guided sessions will be on the Pride of Kinston, the downtown revitalization organization for the city. Thank you.